Welcome back to the workshop. I did a live and I made a tool. I like making tools. So what I want to do is edit that live down into a short form video, sort of 15 minutes or so, and get all the salient points into it. This is the finished product. It's a spike drive. So it's got a central spike for lining up, then 4 spikes around the edge to make it into a 4-pronged drive effectively, just larger scale. What's it for? So these spikes are long enough to go through bark and drive a natural edge piece. They also go with odd shapes, burrs and whatever. They give you more options. But also, if you've got a standard pill-shaped bolt blank, as long as you know where the middle is, line it up with that, bring your tailstock up. It's a very quick way of getting a blank on there for roughing out. So, how do I do it? Simply a nut embedded in here. And then I put a plate over the top of the nut. Did that so I could raise it 1/8 of an inch or 3mm, so that this spike stands prominent of these spikes, so I can line up with it. So that's the basics of it. What I want to talk about is the anatomy of the headstock. Now this bit here, this is the register plate. This is the most important part of the entire thing. Mine's an ASR. Yours might not be ASR, but mine is. Even if it isn't, it will have that register plate. Reason being that something that's just on the threads has to have some slop in it in order to allow you to put it on there and take it off again. So you need something solid and flush, square with the tailstock to square everything up. And mine has got this. It's also got a groove for the older style of reverse locking with a grub screw. And then there's a shoulder here. Not all lathes have this shoulder, but most do nowadays. This shoulder stops you from taking the chuck off with the grub screw still tight, which happens, and damaging the thread. It hits the shoulder first. And I've bought M33 by 3.5 stainless steel nuts. Obviously that suits most European modern lathes, but if you've got an older lathe or an American lathe, whatever your thread size is what you need. Now you don't want it to go on tight. You don't want that against that shoulder. You want it about 1 millimetre away from it. Reason being is that can cause things to lock. If it's just away, then the only pressure is here, and that's what matters. So I could have done with a half nut rather than a full nut, a half thickness, but they're harder to get. Now the sensible way of doing this is to stick a piece on there that's the right size, and then glue a piece to there with a hole in it for the nut. But we didn't do that on this video because that's boring. But that back piece on my lathe is a 35mm hole. And then I have a choice. I could either use a 50mm hole and then just chisel out the corners and make it fit the nut perfectly. Or the choice I actually go for is a 55mm hole, which is a tight fit on the corners of the nut. Then just put some epoxy down into these gaps and that will lock it in place just as well, and it's just easier to do. So yeah, if you're making a sanding disc, then gluing 2 pieces together is fine. Do make sure that the back is absolutely straight, because otherwise that will affect the tip of it when it comes out here. Again, if it's a sanding disc, it's not massively essential. So my spike drive, you put that on. You then take a piece of wood that you want to put onto it, and I want to put this on this way. Now I could possibly do that with a wood worm screw. Wouldn't be supported very well because it doesn't really touch anything. If we go to, if I want to mount this with the curved side towards the headstock, as you can see, it doesn't really touch anything. It's not very well set for that. I would need to make a flat spot, put a wood worm screw in or something like that. It wouldn't be a great connection. But with this, I can simply put it in place, bring up my tailstock, screw it in, and you'll see that these two aren't anywhere near, but these two are connected. The centre one's connected. It won't come off because the centre one and the tailstock are in line and connected, and those two will drive it. Let's have a quick look at that. So an odd-shaped piece of wood, perfectly well driven. First thing to do is to flatten this, make sure it is flat. Well, that was actually pretty flat before I started, so that's why I was taking very small cuts. So I've got a 35mm drill, which I've already made sure it fits over the back section. And the depth I need to go to is just slightly more than the head of the Forstner bit. Again, on your lathe, if you're doing this, then measure everything and do it appropriately. It's actually a beech blank. I was going to say the wood doesn't really matter for this, but it does. I was turning some black locust yesterday, so I had to clean up my lathe bed today because it was covered in yellow staining, same as you get with olive and oak and other high tannin timbers. So don't use a high tannin for this because it's going to be metal against metal, and you might end up with a problem if you do that. So although it doesn't really matter what wood you use, try and use an inert wood, something that isn't going to do any corrosion or damage. I will just shape it down so it's a bit smaller at the back than it is at the front. Oh, the temptation is just turn this away to nothing. Now I'm actually doing this wrong because I'm using this face of the chuck as my register here. It's not the right way to do things, but it does work, and it'll be fine. Okay, so this is a 55mm drill bit. Will all be good. It's going to make the hole big enough for the nut to drop in, then I'm going to epoxy it in place. That'll be fine. So basically I've just drilled that through until it's met up with the other hole that I did from the other side. What I've got now is this. And my nut should drop nice and neat in there, and then that should be the nice spacer to the back, and that should all work. Now, you could do anything you wanted with that, depending on the diameter. You could put a sanding disc on it, you could do anything you want. But there's a bit more I want to do to this just before we finish. So my nut drops into there, so I'm going to use 2 mallets. And just do a quick visual inspection, make sure everything's down and square and flush, and we're all good. And I want to put a spike in the middle. So my blue peat at the moment, I made that before. And that fits in there, and that can be glued in on top of the nut. And so I have a perfectly flat flat face when I finished. Seriously, if you're not doing this on a YouTube live, and at 5 minutes it can hold a couple of ton. You get the slower setting one, it can hold something like 8 or 9 ton. I wouldn't trust it myself, but you know, not when you pay £2 from it in a discount shop. It's certainly going to be strong enough for this purpose. It's not there for strength, it's just there as a gripper. So all I'm doing is just packing it down in there, and that's already a tight fit in that hole. Once this glue has gone off, then that nut is going nowhere. Bed and get that done, so if you come back in the morning or whatever, it'll be there. And the spikes as well, I'll put the link for those. But I'm sure you can find these locally. And they're bloody heavy. So you don't really want them getting posted to you. So an odd shaped piece of wood, perfectly well driven.